Hi everyone, welcome back to Evergrowing. This is a show where we talk about inner growth for leaders. I think that's really the most important thing. In order for us to lead anyone, we first have to lead ourselves. And what does leading oneself mean? Well, this growth journey and this growth mindset. If you don't know me already, my name is Sabrina. I run Evergrowth Coaching. I was previously the head of coaching to Matt Mashari, who coaches some of the most well-known tech companies out there like Coinbase, Reddit, and etc. Nowadays, I work with lots of wonderful CEOs and executives and leaders and investors. And on the day-to-day, I help them tackle their top challenges. And this show is a way for me to bring some of those learnings and some of those topics that come up again and again and again to all of you. So today, I want to talk about resisting change. We've all been there. I've certainly been there countless times in my life, and I see my clients in that space over and over again. And often, more often than not, those are the moments that they come to coaching and they're thinking quite how to get this change. And how do you know when you're resisting change? Here are the 3 signs that you're resisting change. Number 1, you're procrastinating. You know that you're supposed to be doing things, but you're not doing them. Number 2, you're avoiding responsibilities. Now, this is a little bit different than procrastinating. If you're the leader of the company, you might be delegating too much and asking people to take on too much responsibility that's not supposed to be yours. Number 3 is a decreased sense of motivation. Things that were exciting to you are no longer exciting, and you just feel like you don't have as much energy, you don't have as much motivation, it's harder to get out of bed. Now, all of those could be a sign that a change is coming and you're just resisting it. The resisting take a lot of energy, and sometimes it's an intentional resisting, but a lot of times it's not. I'll tell you something that I recently went through. I was in a funk of resisting change for a few months, really, and it was a sneaky one because I'm a coach and I thought I'm supposed to know this about myself, and I go to therapy regularly, I get coaching regularly, I'm all in all of these self-development and growth things that I'm thinking I should know, and I journal all the time. So resisting change is a sneaky thing. Essentially, what I gathered was I got everything that I've ever wanted, that I've been working for the past 3 to 5 years, and all of those things have become true. I never thought that I could run a successful, profitable business. I never thought that I could work with amazing people, and that doing something that I love, that I'm naturally good at, coaching, which is in the past a hobby, now it's my 9 to 5. We bought a home, we bought a new car. There are all of these things that we have been working towards as a couple, and for me, myself, for many years, and they've come true. And I was resisting the change of the next level because I was scared that I even deserved the next level. So what that looked like was I really needed to hire additional help for my business, and I was putting that off. So I just compiled this long to-do list that overwhelmed me, that I procrastinated from doing. I avoided responsibilities. There are things that I should have been stepping in that I wanted to do, whether it's in my personal life or in my work life, that I just simply pushed off to other people, or again, going back to procrastination, right? And then I was feeling low energy. I wasn't really feeling like myself. So those are the things that could happen when you're resisting change. When you feel any of those things, it might not mean that something is deeply wrong. It might not mean that something big is wrong. It might just mean that you're ready for the next level and you haven't really punched through those limiting beliefs or those obstacles to get there. Now, when it comes to evolving to the next level, after spending hundreds and maybe thousands of hours in coaching sessions, there is one common obstacle for the majority of us. That is the weight of other people's expectations. You've all heard this. You've all felt this. What would other people think of me? What would my friends think of me? What would my employees think of me? What would my investors think of me? What would my mentors think of me? Those things sometimes are in the forefront of our brain and sometimes they're in the background. That could feel like being pulled in multiple different directions, and that causing the resistance to change because you're so afraid of upsetting a certain group of people that you're just remaining the same instead of evolving. Now, this is a trap, I think, for really successful people. There are some people that I coach that are really, really successful. They've been running multiple businesses and they're really well known. They're very well connected. It's almost like the more that you are known, the more people highly regard you as an expert in your field, the harder it is for you to evolve yourself and to change the way that you're doing things. Now, I'll give you a few examples. So one is like an internal company change, and one is like the personality lifestyle change. There is the CEO, let's call her Sarah. Sarah has been a service leader. So she's always had this approach of, I'm here to help, and she's very warm and very kind, and she gives people a lot of opportunities to improve. So people are very comfortable with that type of style. It's almost like if you fail, you get to try again and again and again. And as a result, the morale is extremely high. The loyalty is extremely high at the company. But the problem with Sarah's company is that they were not achieving the outcomes and the deadlines and the results that they all have the potential for. This is a common problem. Lots of people say, hey, I hired great people, or I have great processes. Why are we not setting out to do the things that we can do, right? So Sarah in coaching has realized she was holding back on expectations and feedback and requirements for her company. She was holding back on her truth, and she was afraid of other people's expectations changing, that they no longer like Sarah, or she's now a terrible boss, or they're going to leave the company. So because of those expectations that were hidden and really, really heavy, she was not allowing the company to grow as much as it could. So instead, what we worked on was having Sarah get very, very concrete on all the things that she wants to say and all the things that she wants to do without thinking about the expectations of other people, because this is the part of the truth. I think no matter whether you go through with it or not, that's almost secondary. We all have the right, I think really our birthright, to go through and think about what our truth is, and to allow ourselves to feel our truth and allow ourselves to feel that really is empowering, so that we're not suffocating and suppressing our thoughts and our processes and our emotions just because of other people. So then we got this whole page of write-up from Sarah on all the things that she would like to do if other people's reactions weren't a thing. Then I think the second step is working on the relational aspect, right? Now you got the message may not be said in the exact way that she wants to be said, and we really worked on who she wants to communicate to, what are their fears, what are their motivations, how are they likely to receive it. We did a lot of role playing, and we really coached on her getting into the perspective of this other person and speaking about what they care about, what they would need to know, instead of focusing so much on what Sarah needs. With that, Sarah felt a lot more empowered to just say the things she needs to say and change the company's culture into being able to ship a lot faster and do a lot more good things. And people received that really well too. The thing is, Sarah was probably right. People were going to be a little bit surprised when there's a behavioral change. But if you're clear about communicating before, you're clear about what your actions are and why you're making those changes, and you're consistent about your actions, people do come around. That is the thing about life. We all change, and if we resist change, it creates more problems than just leaning into growth. And growth is hard. Some people will stay, some people will leave. Not everyone at the company belongs there if you're ready to take it to the next stage. However, it's not a reason not to do it. Now, I want to give you a second example. This is an example of someone that I'm coaching who's thinking about, essentially, let's call him Josh. And Josh has been a serial entrepreneur. Now, he's gotten quite a reputation in investing, and he's thinking to himself, not only has this been an amazing journey, he's realizing he's ready for something more. And because of all the people that know Josh for an entrepreneur and an investor, he really wasn't able to allow him to think about what might be next. And what might be next could be a lot of different things. It could be related to investing, it could be not related. So Josh was experiencing lowered level of motivation. He used to love what he does, but he doesn't like it anymore. And what we worked on in coaching session was having him just be able to dream. Just because you've done something for 10 years and now you've changed your heart doesn't mean that you don't get to dream about a different future. So we went over and over again, what are his values? What does his family want? What what does he want in his work life? What kind of people does he want to be around? And he was able to come up with a few options. Now, Josh may or may not go with these options, but at least he gave himself the liberty to think about that. And then again, similar to Sarah's example, we worked on how are you going to release it to the world, because Josh does have a little bit of a public persona. So what does he have to say to other people? And then I asked him, does other people's opinion actually matter? What if you release it publicly and people say, what the hell are you doing, Josh? Well, then Josh looked at me and said, well, that doesn't really matter because I care the most about my dear friends and my family's opinion. So then we worked on how he talks to his family. And he said, well, my family already knows they're going to be okay. And then we worked on how are you going to talk to your close friends, your close colleagues. And then there were a few people he wasn't sure how they're going to respond, but ultimately he thought that if I'm going through with this change, my life is more important than theirs. And I also reminded Josh, and I want to remind all of you, that this is a world with an overwhelming amount of information. Your news might be a big news for someone this week, maybe even this month, but everybody moves on eventually. And if their reaction is the thing that's been keeping you stuck for months, just imagine the future where they get to come to the other side of it and you move on. And if people are not on board, at least you were staying true to yourself. Now, I think we've come around to one of the things that is really important to me in the way that I live my life, that I've learned from a lot of people, which is living my life the way that I want, knowing my values, knowing my truth is sometimes even more important than winning in the short term. Now, why is that important? I've had this discussion with so many clients lately, and one of my clients that I love working with sent me this interview with Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant in this interview basically was asked, do you play to win or do you play to lose? And he said, neither. I play to learn, because if you play to win, you're going to be afraid. If you don't win, if you play to not lose, then you're going to be stressed out if you do lose. So all of that causes stress. And similarly, if you play or if you live for other people's approval or validation or expectations of you, you have no control of that. And by the way, other people's expectations and thoughts of you are most of the times a projection of their own experience. And they only know a part of you. They don't know the whole you, especially in this world of entrepreneurship where there are already so many ups and downs. It is important to find a way to ground the big reason of why we do our work and how we make our decisions and how do we stay grounded in the ups and downs. And for me, I kind of come back to a few things. I actually come back to 3 things. I know Kobe, he plays for learning, but for me, I have 3 things that I navigate on. So number 1, growth. Number 2, helping other people. And number 3, my truth and knowing myself. So I'll explain them all. So number 1, growth mindset. This is very similar to what Kobe explained, where it's all about learning. When things happen, I like to think, what am I supposed to learn from this? If I learn from this, then I win, essentially. So I completely redefined winning into if I get to learn, if I get to grow. And I'm always curious about growing in all aspects of my life. And the second thing being, how can I help other people? Now, everybody has a different flavor of this, but if you know me, you know that I do this as a profession and I also love to help people in my personal life. I think that I was put into this world to help people. And when I help people, I feel a profound sense of satisfaction. So if I have the extra energy to be able to help people, then that feels right. I make decisions along those lines a lot. What I've recently learned is that helping other people comes with a criteria, is that I help myself first. Because in my earlier years, I thought helping people is sometimes more important than myself. And I take responsibility for other people's emotions and their expectations. That's what got me a lot in the earlier scenarios when we talked about being stuck and resisting change because of what other people will think of me. So I can help other people with a caveat that I help myself first. And that leads to the third point is I know myself, I know my own truth. I think the most beautiful thing and the most profound relationship anyone can have is the relationship that we have with ourselves. Early on in my life, I knew a lot about my anxieties and my fears because those things basically paralyzed me from being able to be who I want to be. I was so good at being a shapeshifter. I could be whoever you need me to be. as a kid, I can say all the right things, and that created this hollow feeling inside of me. It literally did not feel good for me viscerally to be in those spaces and look at the life that I created. Well, I know I was a kid, but I thought choosing an auditing career, choosing an accounting career is the thing that's safe and what a responsible Asian girl would do to be able to find a job in the United States. For those of you who don't know, I came from China and I've always wanted to be able to have a life here in the US. Obviously, that career wasn't the right fit for me. That's what sent me on a journey of finding out what is right for me. Who am I? What are the things I like? What are the values that I stand for? And year by year, I've found so much more parts of myself that I feel truly proud of and I've welcomed home. And this gives me a sense of wholeness and gives me a sense of assuredness and okayness that no matter what happens, I will be fine because I've got me. I know that I'm resourceful. I know that I'm a good friend. I know that I'm a good wife, and etc. So all of these things serve as a foundation for me to be brave and curious and resilient in my business pursuits. And thankfully, I can afford myself the time to be able to figure things out. So all to say, in order to be less and less sensitive to other people's expectations, to be able to resist change, we really need to correct over here. If we're not focused on other people's expectations, let's focus internally and find out what's important to each and every one of us. And I would really recommend that you pick something that you can work on for the rest of your life. All of those three things that I listed, growth, helping others, and knowing myself, I can never master all three of those things. There is never an end to it, and I will always learn and fail in each of those categories, and that's okay with me. So all of that, I mean, if you're listening to this point, I thank you for listening because those things are so important and dear to my heart. Now, let me tell you and let me update you on my personal struggle that I went through, where I mentioned I was in a funk and I got everything that I wanted and I went through it. So I realized I had a limiting belief that people are going to think that I'm greedy or I'm almost like this imposter if I want even more. Like, who was I to think that I could have even more, right? Because nobody in my life, in my family line, basically in my family tree, was able to even dream of the life that I'm having today. If you didn't know my backstory, my grandma was basically in deep poverty just 2 generations ago, and they were really struggling financially. They were struggling to put food on the table. So having the life that I have today it's amazing for everyone that's ever been in my family, and I'm deeply grateful for that. So to be able to imagine a better future, not having grown up with people who afforded these abilities, but was a real challenge for me. And I didn't want people to think that I was ungrateful. I didn't want people to think that I was greedy, but that also realized nobody cares. Even if people thought that way, I don't know who they are. They don't control my day-to-day. So I started to peel away those limiting beliefs, and I started to focus on my truth and write down, okay, do get to ask. If I do get to imagine, what are the things I would want? And I wrote down what all of those things are, and it felt really scary as hell at first to say, hey, how am I even gonna solve for this? How am I even gonna get there? But I do want those things, and I do get to say that I want to. Whether they become true or not, I have a right to say those things. So I have those written down. I sat with them for a long time, and I acknowledged all the great things that has come to my life. And most importantly, I acknowledged my part in making that happen, because sometimes it's hardest giving ourselves credit. It feels really vulnerable. And then I listed out the scenarios of what is that, what is this person says this, if, and I actually pictured those people in my mind, and I pictured how I would have those conversations with them and if they would say those things. My conclusion is most of them won't actually say those things. And even if they find me fault in going in a certain direction, then that's okay. I'm okay with that. I would rather choose taking a leap of faith in myself and what I want to go in life rather than hanging on to the other people's expectations. So I hope this is helpful. If any of this resonates with you, if any of this is helpful to you, please feel free to drop me a DM or send me an email. I'll leave my contact information in the show notes. I read all of the messages that come through on the podcast, and I would love to hear what you think. So thank you for listening. If you like this episode, you might really enjoy my interview with Amanda Goez, and we'll show that on the screen here so you could go into it. We talk a lot about self-worth and how to make decisions, and she has some amazing stories and framework in that that interview. Also, you might be interested in hearing about this episode around why I became a coach. If you're interested in how kind of I made these transitions, realizing I was stuck with other people's expectations. And this one key decision in the past few years on becoming a coach has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. So thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.